1980s.
All right.
Vintage gum.
Rich Foley here. We're at Bookview now, and this is BookCon 2015. I'm with Tony DiTerlizzi, our very first guest host of the day. First of all, thank you so much for agreeing to spend a full hour with us.
I'm super excited. Than's for having me, Rich.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Fun.
It's going to be
Talking
great.
books. It's like, aside from food, I think books and food. I'm good.
Yeah, what you're going to find all day long is this, especially at BookCon, this incredibly passionate group of people that are here. And they're all over the place, and it's fun to be with them in the same building. I can feel the energy all the way from over here.
It's great, too, because I think as an author and an illustrator, a lot of times I'm at home, I'm in my pajamas, I'm either at a computer or at an easel, and you don't often get to be around other people who love the same thing, or just tell you, hey, I really loved your book, it's a really awesome book. It's kind of an isolated life sometimes, so to be in a place like this, celebrating books, hopefully some of them are celebrating your books as well. It's just a great feeling, very validating for me.
For sure, and you have so many elements in play here at BookCon. We should talk about them a little bit. You've got the Star Wars book. We have a whole segment coming up on the Star Wars books that you're going to be hosting with all the other authors of that.
Yeah.
You've got your book with Willems.
Yeah.
Diva and Flea that we have a segment coming up on, and then you've got your books, A Search for One Law, and let's not forget, or the One Law series, let's not forget too, Spiderwick Chronicles and so many other things that you do. You're really all over the board. So you get to play in the comics world, you get to play in that sort of pop culture world, you get to play in the books world. It's a nice little mix for you.
I like to be constantly stimulated. I like to move from different projects that I think that get me really excited about being involved with it. All these books take easily, 9 months to a year for me to make, in some cases even longer. So you've got to be really excited about it. And one of the ways I say stimulated is by choosing projects that get me excited. I mean, you're listing all those things, and I'm like, wow, that sounds cool. And I'm like, oh,
I did it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the One Law series. It's a beautiful collection. First of all, your artwork is one of the highlights, obviously, and then there's a novel in here. I mean, this is like a lot of work.
I had a lot to
combine those. I mean, it's such a beautiful combination, and your work is so memorable. You have a very distinct style, although you can play in other worlds too.
Yeah.
But this one is so distinct and so fun. Tell me about the process of writing these books.
When I was working on the Spiderwick Chronicles, I was fascinated by the idea of Arthur Spiderwick's field guide to trolls and goblins, and the idea of this old, crusty field guide coming forward in time to the present and affecting modern-day kids. And so immediately my mind went the other way and was like, what if I could tell a story from the future that would have impact again on modern-day kids? So in the late 90s and the early 2000s, when I was really working out the bones of Spiderwick, I was working out alongside it the bones for Wandla, and I kind of shelved it for a while. Spiderwick got me busy, and a couple things happened, Rich. I turned 40, and my daughter was born, and I really started to reevaluate a lot of the stories that I wanted to tell for children and stories I wanted to tell for myself.
Really, what was it about your daughter? I mean, 40 I sort of understand. I don't want to tell anybody my age, but I get that one. What was it about your daughter being born that made you change directions like that?
First and foremost, I make all my books for me, for like a 10-year-old version of me. I always ask myself, what does 10-year-old Tony want that old 40-year-old Tony can make? But I think sometimes in this industry, it's easy to forget that we're making books for kids now, and to be around my daughter and see what things she liked, what books she liked, what stories she liked, what she was responding to. And I think probably many parents say this, being around your children reminds you so much of what it's like to be a kid and to see the world through a child's eyes. And so I felt like this was a story I needed to tell for my daughter, Sophia, that I thought, even though she was a baby when I started it, I knew that one day, well, hopefully she'll read it and really like it. A fairy tale for her.
It is a beautiful fairy tale. It's a different process of writing them because there's a mix of the graphics, which must take an enormous amount of time. They're so detailed, so lavish and beautiful. And the novel and the stories itself, which obviously takes quite a bit of time. Just the creative process of weaving those together, explain.
It was different because it's double duty, right? I'm writing and then I'm illustrating, and it's different than how I would have worked collaboratively with Holly on the Spiderwick books. So for this one, it started out with the protagonist. All my books, they're always about that hero, because I feel like if I'm not feeling anything for that hero or understanding that hero, I can't expect my readers to feel the same way. We got to care about Harry Potter or Bilbo Baggins or Luke Skywalker in order to go on this journey with them. So for me, it started with Eva 9, this 12-year-old girl, and I just kept drawing her over and over again, and I would write these little like notes around her of like, kind of character she might be, what she might do, what challenges she might face, and those notes start to grow longer and longer, and there's more and more, and eventually I put the art away, the sketching, and I just start writing. I start writing out an outline, and then I start filling in.
So you put them away? Do you have them up on the wall just to kind of remind you? Because this world building.
Yeah, but
there's
I definitely
so many layers to this.
There's a lot. World building is tricky. Now I got my start. I don't know if you know this. I got my start illustrating for Dungeons and Dragons when I came out of art school, and there I learned a lot about world building. It wasn't just about your character and the monsters. It was all about the environment, the artifacts they use, the clothing and armor that they wore, and how all that stuff interconnects and interrelates. And so it really has helped me. It's been invaluable it was invaluable with Spiderwick, with the world creation that went on there, and absolutely invaluable with Wandla. It's one of my favorite parts, but actually one of the hardest things to do too for me.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about Spiderwick so much was that you read the books and you get tastes and some images, but when you put the field guide together later and you really dove deep into stuff that really wasn't, it was peripheral in the book. At most in some cases, if some of them were even in there.
That's right.
But clearly your mind had been there at some point because there's such depth and thought at every level to some of these drawings. So there's another world that lives beneath the surface of the books for you.
I do. Yeah, I think you have to draw. I was the kid who loved a map on the end papers of a book. When you opened up Phantom Toll Booth or Watership Down, you had these really cool maps. And so you have to construct, I feel like, the playground, the parameters of that world first, and then you can run your adventure through it, and you don't get to see everything, but that's that's where like you said, your imagination gets to kind of explode a little bit,
I needed that map. I mean, Tolkien reading all the Hobbit, or all the Lord of the Rings books, I would find myself reading the book, page 742, and going to the front again and going, wait a minute, where are they?
Where are they? And then there'd be places they never even made it to, and you're like, what lives there? What happens there?
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
You do that same thing to me with these stuff.
Oh, thank you. Well, that said, there's maps in the back of every one of these. I was very insistent on having a map.
Yeah.
So I do the world building, and that's happening as the character. So those are those two things that have to kind of rise at the same time, kind of develop at the same time, and then the challenges that I want to put the character through, and then that'll start to form the plot and everything. Yeah. So I would write the whole darn thing, and then as it was going through an editing at Simon & Schuster, who published it, then I would begin sketching. Now that I would take off the author hat, put on the artist hat, and start going, okay, I think this is the illustration I want to do, and that kind of thing.
Well, a lot of your work is really collaborative, and some isn't. Yeah. Some of it's just with you.
Yeah.
You bounce between them. In a little bit, we're going to throw to a great piece that we recorded earlier in the week with Mo Willems. But tell me the difference between really submerging into a world that you've created that's all yours, or mostly, and working with somebody else.
Well, I think that when you collaborate, all their tools and expertise and experience to it. So I'm fascinated by the mixing of those ethers and what comes of it. Mo and I echoed a lot of what Holly and I experienced when we felt like with Diva and Flea, the book that Mo and I created was a book that neither he could have created on his own nor I could have created on my own. And Holly and I felt the same way with the Spiderwick books, that it had pieces of both of us in it, but it was not. It was a different sum.
Holly Black,
yes, with Holly Black. Yes, I'm so used to doing the interviews with Holly.
You guys are Holly and Tony, but it's Holly Black for those that may not know.
Yes, Newbery Award-winning Holly Black. So that part fascinates me. I really love that, and I think back to a lot of the books that I loved growing up with as a kid. I think of A.A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh books. That I don't know if you loved. I loved. Okay, so in those, Ernest Shepard did the little pen drawings in those. Those to me are just as important as A.A. Milne's words. And I think of W.W. Denza, who illustrated The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum.
Right.
Same thing. Those images are meshed in my imagination and my memories for those books. And so I feel that the best books in my mind have always been very collaborative. I don't know how collaborative the producing of those books was, but the end result to me felt very
they have the desired effect. And so have yours. And yet in this book, you kind of bring it both. They feel almost like it could have been two people. It's the two sides of you, obviously coming to life.
A lot of voices in my head.
That's fun. Your daughter's going to have a blast with these later,
I hope so.
I can't wait.
So.
Well, I really appreciate it, Tony. We've got you for a full hour.
I'm super psyched. Hopefully, your viewers won't be bored of me.
I don't think so. And you're bringing on so many cool people that you're gonna get to share with them as well. But the first thing we're going to throw to is an interview that we did just a couple of days ago with Mo Willems, who was here at Book Expo America. Isn't here today at BookCon. But we're going to talk about that book that you've already referenced, The Story of Diva and Flea. Excellent book. Can't wait to share people with it. Look forward to the rest of the hour.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, here we go.
Let's do it.
Mo Willems. I'm sorry, with Mo Willems and Tony DiTerlizzi.
No, I'm Mo Willems.
It's very confusing now.
Well, the real Mo Willems.
There we go.
It's a pleasure to have you both.
Thank you.
We are here with PBS. We're at Book Expo America and BookCon. They run back to back. And we're here to talk about the story of Diva and Flea. Have you guys ever worked before this book?
We've worked. I was a waiter at one point. I painted bubblegum cards. I've had a lot of jobs. It has not all been a free ride for me.
It hasn't?
No.
Have you ever worked together?
No.
Not together. No. A lot of mutual admiration from afar.
We've neighbored together for many years, and I think that is actually one of the keys to this, is that we have been pals for a long time. And this is a story that takes place in Paris. I took a year in Paris, sort of a sabbatical, and the night before I left for Paris, I went out to dinner with Tony and his family. So, so he's been involved in this trip even before it happened, and now it's a longer trip.
And we're big art collectors, and we've traded art, so we both have a love of children's illustration, and I think there's been a nice, friendly rivalry of like, did you get a new? I got a new piece.
Right.
Right. So
it is amazing how so many of you guys know each other and are friends with each other, and I don't know if that's. I mean, authors tend to know each other, but in this YA community, in the artistic and illustrator community, there does seem to be a real connection that's a little bit deeper even.
yeah, I think because of the majority of our time is spent, at least for me, in isolation. I'm down in my studio and I'm either writing or I'm drawing, and it's great to be able to meet up with someone else who's going through kind of the same thing and reconfirms that you're not insane. Because sometimes
I mean, it's a weird thing that we are on our own, but then there are conventions like this where you get to meet people, and it's a bunny world. It's a very interesting industry, but we all a lot of us live in the same area in this sort of bucolic part of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And what's great is that I like to say you can't throw an artisanally handcrafted rock without hitting another illustrator where we live.
Why Massachusetts? What is it? What is about this bucolic area?
there's
bucolic.
Yeah.
There's the bucoli.
Yeah, that's nice.
I think there's that is a large part of
That's
the bucoli.
Yeah.
The colleges keep the area really hip. I mean, we got like 5 colleges, so it's not a stuffy New England town. There's a lot going on. When we first moved up there 10 years ago, there were record stores, lots of used bookstores. There's good food. And it's filled with ex-New Yorkers.
Right, there's that. And of course there's the Eric Carle Picture Book Museum, which is right there. Eric used to live there.
Yeah.
And so that sort of creates a center. Not only are we neighbors, but a lot of people go through the museum and then they'll stay with Tony, or they might stay with Tony, or perhaps they'll stay with Tony.
Yes.
And then we get to see them.
I've never been invited to Tony's yet, but I'm working on that.
You'll work your way up. Get invited to my place, and then you work your way up.
So, but it wasn't this bucolic part of Massachusetts where the story came out. It was Paris.
It was Paris, yes.
You guys were together. What came first, the desire to work together or the story?
No, the story dictates everything. So this is a story. I lived in Paris for a year, and like some of my other books, everything in this book is true except for the parts that I made up. But I did live in a lovely building that had a very small dog named Diva that was having a relationship with a very large alley cat named Flea. And as I started writing this story, I started to realize that its rhythm demanded a different type of art. In the business, the reason I didn't draw it is in the business we needed something that is called good drawing.
You don't think yours is good?
And that's not what I do.
Fortunately, I owed Mo a lot of money on a bet that I lost.
No, but I did know that Tony was in a place where he kind of wanted to like go back and look at some of these old chapter books that he really liked. He wanted to go back and do some art and take a little bit of a respite from what his other projects were. And then, like I say, the story demanded that Tony do it. And after he agreed, I had no idea how collaborative it would be from there. And it was surprisingly and wonderfully collaborative. I mean, he really changed what the story ultimately was about.
How so? How did that collaboration sprout? What happened?
Well, I mean, I think it came out of like working with Holly on Spiderwick, and in that process, Holly and I often were like, we would talk story. I would show her the art, very different than the usual roles that an author and an illustrator take in creating a book. So I asked Mo when he rang me up. I mean, obviously I was so flattered, but I was also like, let's just give everything we can to make the best book possible. And
it is all about the book.
Yeah, that's the way we both feel.
Here's the thing: is I'm the writer, but I know how to draw.
Yeah.
And he's the illustrator, but he knows how to write.
Yeah.
So it's we're each sort of looking out for potholes for the other and getting a sense of it. And a lot of it is philosophical talk about the feel of the piece.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, it's really, really a fun way to go about it.
You really have to pull like you can't hold back. I mean, we're for me, I regard books for children so highly that I will do anything I can to try to make the best book possible. And absolutely delineating some role would be, that doesn't make any sense, especially given what we both have done separately. Then why not use our superpowers together to try to make the best book possible?
I think Tony and I both come from one philosophical thing, is that you're not making a book, you're making a child's friend. And so it is incumbent upon you to, one may not be perfect, but to make the best possible friend that you can. Yeah. And that means challenging each other. That means pissing each other off a little from time to time.
Yeah.
But it's not about us. It really is about this object that is going to be, I'll put it this way, books don't come with subtitles. They don't say like, well, it was a really hard year, or I needed to get this done, or whatnot. The book is the book.
It seems like you guys really enjoy the collaborative side. I mean, it's so different when you're doing your own stuff and you're going down that path, and it's all you, it's your characters, it's the pigeon, it's Nuffle Bunny, it's your family, it's Trixie. This is stuff that you're putting out in the world. With this, and with you, Tony, it's one law, and it's the stuff that you do on your own. But this, you get to totally surrender that. You get to open up to the possibility that someone knows maybe better than you do, or can make it better.
We both come from a place of collaboration. Tony's work with Holly was definitely very collaborative, and I started in television, which is highly collaborative. And I guess it's a little bit like the push and pull of your muscles. I love to do my own stuff, but at a certain point, I want to have a more open, conversational form of creation, because I don't sit in a room when I'm doing an Elephant and Piggy book and talk to myself.
It can go in a different direction, though, than you maybe anticipated. You find that as like a great thing, or you're like,
well, it makes a third thing that neither he nor I would have been able to create on our own. That inspires me and it fascinates me, and you learn a lot. I felt like you learn a lot. You come out of the other side of it, and you're like, it will affect the next things that I create when I do my next book about a frog and
a and a sprig. Yes, no, I'm sure.
Well, and the drawings for this are really like they're whimsical. They're different than your other. It's different than your other stuff. It's like they're lovely and in many cases colorful and sometimes not. But it's more fun. It's more whimsical and a little less sort of detailed as some of certainly the stuff of Spiderwick was.
Right. Well, you have to listen to what the story is telling you, and the story has a mood. It has. It's kind of the between the lines, what's going on in the story, and that feeling. The best way I can liken it is if it's music, are you going to play an acoustic guitar, or are you going to play an electric guitar, and is it going to be turned way up, or is it going to be So the feelings that I got when I read Mo's manuscript were like, oh, well, this is a little bit of fun, but there's like there's a nice undercurrent of something that are real, as you said, like philosophical. Challenges that these characters are dealing with. There's complexity there. So the art can be playful, but it should also have a bit of a serious tone to it. So immediately I thought of Arnold Lobel. I showed you some Arnold Lobel, who did like Frog and Toad Are Friends. We thought of Maurice Sendak and the Little Bear books. And when you have a starting place, and that both of us really felt excited about, then I can then start creating from that place.
And one of the great things was that in this story, there's a character that really has never left its house, and there's a character that's never had its house. Yeah. And I've been very lucky. I've traveled a lot. We lived in Paris for a while. I've lived in other countries. Tony had not been to Paris. No. And so him going there with the eyes of this book and then coming back and seeing the city and seeing the colors, particularly the colors change as he was there, was revelatory for me as well. That also changed the tone. It was, I mean, how fun is that?
That is fun.
Right?
It was pretty amazing.
And both you guys, this is where I slather on the praise part of the interview, but you talk about Sendak and some of the books of my childhood and some of the writers that meant so much to me. You're now writing books that mean that much to the kids that are growing up today, whether it's Nuffle Bunny, whether it's Spiderwick. I can tell you from experience with both of my with both of your books and my family, they're having that same effect. And it's wonderful that you guys found your way to each other and that we have Diva and Flea. And I hope there's more. Is there going to be more?
I think the story has to create the combination. I put it this way, there's no way that we would never not work together, but the story has not presented itself.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wait for another one for it to come crashing into our worlds. But in the meantime, the story of Diva and Flea, Tony DiTerlizzi, Mo Willems. I got it right this time. Thank you both so much for being here. It's really great to have you.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Thanks.
For many of us big kids, Star Wars started back in 1977 with a film that hit the theaters and blew everyone's mind. It was quickly followed by other films, The Empire Strikes Back, my favorite, and in 1983's Return of the Jedi. I think I speak for everyone who's super excited for Episode 7, The Force Awakens. But to celebrate these original classic films, we have three amazing best-selling authors with us today who have retold the original Star Wars movies for an entire new generation. I'm here today with best-selling author Alex Bracken, known for the Darkest Minds series.
Yep.
Adam Gidwitz, known for A Tale Dark and Grim, and Tom Angleberger, one of my favorites, the Origami Yoda series. Guys, here we are, BookCon.
Amazing.
Let's talk some Star Wars. I wanted, I got a chance to do a little bit of a Star Wars retelling myself, which was completely insane. I know you guys feel the same way. How do you guys think Star Wars has impacted your books that you've done up to this point?
Well, for me personally, Star Wars was what taught me as a storyteller that characters are crucial to drawing the audience in and making them be able to relate to even like the most fantastical premise and world that they're situated in. So as long as there's a character that it has so much heart and is really driving the story, I've always kind of carried that with me as a writer and made sure to focus first on the character and build the world off of them and build the story off of them.
So when you saw Star Wars first, who was that character?
For me, that character was Luke, which is perfect because Star Wars fits into the traditional hero's journey so perfectly. Yeah. And so that's actually like another great thing about Star Wars for young writers is that it teaches them sort of that traditional story arc and how all of these different characters fit into it like a puzzle.
Yeah.
So Luke, when he has his whole world opened up to this wonder, it's incredible, and you feel the same way as a viewer.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. What about you, Adam? Like, I mean, you tend towards darker, like grim type fairy tales.
Right, I do. And so, A Tale Dark and Grim, in it, the main characters are Hansel and Gretel. And in the beginning, they run away from their home because their father does something scary.
Yeah.
And the whole book, they're trying to find a new family, and in the end, they're going to have to reconcile with their father. There's a big reconciliation, but also a confrontation. When you're writing a big ending that involves the father being the bad guy, you can't not have Empire Strikes Back looming over you, breathing, and you have to be careful. You can't just, you can't be like, Hansel and Gretel, I am your father, right? You can't do that. Certainly the way that George Lucas used the hero's journey and resolved the father issues absolutely forefront in my mind when I'm writing the resolution for my first book, A Tale Dark and Grim.
Nice.
Yeah.
So some people may not know exactly. We're all referring to the hero's journey. I think a lot of writers and filmmakers do that. Could you just explain a little bit what the hero's journey is?
Sure. So Joseph Campbell was one of the first people to sort of talk about the hero's journey, and he went through old myths and folklore and found that they shared a basic structure. There's a protagonist who usually has to leave his home in order to save it. He goes out into the world. He meets different characters along the way. One is usually a father figure. Another is sort of a mother figure. And often by the end, one of the his mentor figure has to die, right?
Yeah.
Which we see in Star Wars and Harry Potter and all over the place.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
has to happen.
Yeah.
And then at the end, often there is a confrontation with the father figure. That is a major feature of the hero's journey. And George Lucas was very explicit in following the hero's journey, and Joseph Campbell became one of his mentors.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, I've thought about that often in the books I've written.
Yeah,
it's almost so powerful that it's hard to veer away from it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's not a secret formula, but it feels like it could help you if you were ever stuck with a plot.
It's so deeply ingrained, I feel, because it's just been a part of our mythology in all cultures' mythologies. Really, it's like the universal story.
Yeah, and it's funny when you're working on your book, and I found in drafts, oh, my book's just not working. It's not working, and then like, oh, I deviated from the hero's journey. Oops, and I fix it.
That'll show you.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tom, and when you did the Origami Yoda books, did you use the hero's journey?
Yeah, I did, and the thing
Did
is,
you?
I would not even know about the hero's journey if not for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that really got me was the garden, where there's all this chaos and fighting, and then all of a sudden there's this beautiful place, and the hero can just take it easy for as long as they want. There's no hurry, just stay here. It's beautiful. And the hero's got to be like, that would be nice, but I've got to go.
Yeah.
I've got to finish.
Kind of test their
And-
metal.
Yeah. So I actually have that. That's one of my books, is the book where Dwight, it is one of my Origami Yoda books.
Yeah.
Dwight goes to a different school. Everybody is so nice to him. Oh, we think you're so special. We love you here. And eventually Dwight has to realize that he's more of a pet than a friend.
Yeah.
At that school, and he has to go back back to the other school where it's a lot tougher on a daily basis. But it's also, he's a real person at that school.
And so obviously Star Wars clearly affected it, but I feel like with the Origami Yoda books, you created your own. Star Wars is almost the MacGuffin. I mean, to use film termage, with the Origami Yoda books. Would you say that's the case, or?
Well, it's a lot more than that, because whenever I've like run out of ideas or anything like that, I can always go back to Star Wars for more, for something new.
Yeah.
And there have been times when I'm like writing and I'm like, I just don't know, I'm out. And I would watch the movies again, and Yoda would say something, and I'd be like, oh yeah,
Got another book. That's another book.
So so it has really shaped things. There was a time when we weren't sure we'd be able to use the Star Wars characters, and I was going to have to rewrite it for something else.
What would have
It would
worked?
have been so
What could it have been?
lame.
Yeah.
And even if I had gotten one book out of that, who would have wanted another book and another book?
Yeah.
But with the Star Wars, it drove itself. It was like, well, of course Darth Vader's going to show up.
Yeah.
Of course the princess has to come and straighten things out. You know?
Yeah.
It all just, Star Wars is just amazing.
And
Lucasfilm
was so supportive, right?
Oh my gosh, they were incredible.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. So a lot of us, I would say, though, yes, you have Star Wars as a component of your books, but you're an original storyteller. I know for myself, one of the reasons why I did the picture book version of Star Wars was I would do anything to get a kid to pick up a book and read a book. And that, if it's Star Wars, then that's exciting.
Yeah.
But then, so we all get the call, right? We all each individually got approached by Lucasfilm and then the Disney Corporation to do a version of Star Wars. I was like blown. I was so excited, but then it dawned on me, this is a lot. This is like a really tall order. How do you do it?
Well, for me personally, I grew up reading Star Wars books. My dad was a Star Wars collector. All I wanted to read from ages like 8 to 14 were Star Wars books. Especially, I love the Young Jedi Knight series with like Han and Leia's kids. And I think all of those stories are now, what are they? They're calling them like the legacy books rather than the expanded
Legends.
Star Wars Legends. Thank you. So it was. Those books were the books that made me become such a big reader, and so I felt so much pressure initially that I was like, how do I get over that initial hurdle of like nerves and panic?
Yeah.
But, like I just like reconnected to my love of the series, and I wanted to make sure that there would be I knew that there were other kids out there like me who could become readers by just like diving into Star Wars, into the movies, into the TV shows that they've been watching. And I think that it's going to be really exciting for them to read different like takes on the original stories, don't you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope so. I hope so.
That's what we're banking on.
Yep.
Working hard for it.
We were all at Star Wars Celebration recently, and I remember you had said to us that you'd been going to Celebration for years with your pop. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so my dad was a Star Wars collector, which basically meant from when I was in first grade right up until he passed away a few years ago. we would go to Star Wars conventions every weekend. We'd be hitting up the toy stores, like looking for the new releases. He was on a first name basis with people at Toys R Us, which as a kid was so cool because we got to go into the back room and
It's like a celebrity.
I know. It's like, here's Dan, he's ready.
Do you have the case I'm looking for?
Yes.
The rare Boba Fett. Yeah.
So I have like a very personal connection to Star Wars, and so I mean, from age, I think the first Star Wars convention I went to was in like '96. So I was 9 years old, and now I'm 28. And so it was amazing to go back to the celebration this past, when was that? April.
Yeah.
And
Almost 20 years later.
I know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just been like 20 years of Star Wars, basically.
So in some ways, you almost didn't even have to think about it a little bit. You almost could, like, if you just, not, I don't mean it that way, but almost it's in there. It's all in there. It's almost like just a relax, go to your writer place and start writing.
It was crazy the things that I like suddenly remembered about the universe that I would pull out. I think like Tom was like, how did you know they spoke the language Basic? I was like, because I've read so many of these books and been around this culture for so long. And
I was very impressed that
Thank
you threw
I
Basic
know.
in there.
And when Tom is impressed, that's
know,
serious.
that's the
legit.
highest praise.
Because that guy knows.
I know.
I would take your praise over George Lucas's praise. That's
Yes.
how
Whoa.
Tom is like ultimate,
He knows.
ultimate Star Wars fan.
Yeah. And I know for you, Adam, you know, obviously you love fairy tales.
Yeah.
You've said often that there's a lot of correlation.
Absolutely. And you know, I mean, to give the folks like a little bit of background information or like sort of behind the scenes information, I wasn't approached directly by Lucasfilm. I was approached by you. I got an email from Tony DiTerlizzi being like, "Hey man, you want to hop on the phone sometime?" And I was like, "What? Yes. Why is amazing bestseller Tony DiTerlizzi writing to me?" I was like, "I'd love to." We get on the phone. I'm in a hotel room on tour, and we start talking, and we talk for like 45 minutes about anything, stories and Wizard of Oz and Tintin and all the storytelling techniques. I mean, it was awesome. But after 45 minutes, I was like, what are we doing? Like, why are we talking?
Interviewing him? What was happening?
No, it wasn't that at all. No. It was just they were looking for
figure out
a
whether it was
diverse
gonna work.
list of authors that they really wanted to do these books.
Cool.
And
So then finally I was like, "What's up, Tony?" And he was like, "Well, there's this opportunity." And when he told me, I was like,
Amway,
"Oh,
you're
whoa."
gonna love this.
Yeah.
Opportunity with a capital O.
With a giant O, illuminated letter O. So, So, but then when I accepted it, which was immediately, I was thinking, what do I really? I mean, I don't have that history with Star Wars that you do. I love the movies, but I don't have the history or the deep knowledge that you have. And so I thought, well, what does a guy who knows about fairy tales and dark fairy tales know about The Empire Strikes Back?
Everything.
And it turns out everything.
Yeah.
Because The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars is a fairy tale. Lucas said he was setting out to write a fairy tale when he wrote it.
Yeah.
And Empire Strikes Back is the darkest of the movies, so the dark fairy tale thing worked perfectly. Specifically, the main character of every fairy tale is an empty character. They don't have a lot of personality traits. You know, Cinderella, we know almost nothing about her.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose for that. And the purpose is that children can put themselves into her shoes, into her golden shoes or her glass shoes, depending on which tradition you're reading, and follow her. Yeah, sorry, drop a little knowledge on you.
Fur slippers in the original.
In French, they were fur.
Only in the French.
In German,
My
they're gold.
mistake.
Yeah, in English, they mistranslated ver from fur. Anyway, to glass, regardless. And you can follow in her footsteps. So, Luke, I think, is an empty character. I think that's the reason you identified with him so much, perhaps.
Yeah, you step into his shoes.
I mean, he's a guy, but he has so few characteristics that you can be him too.
Yeah.
He's not like Han with a sharply defined personality. He's not like Leia, who's a real powerful woman.
Yes.
He's brave and he's kind.
Yeah.
That's about it.
It's interesting you say that too, because I wondered if it's Luke's humble, you know, again, hero's journey stuff, very humble beginnings. If you ask a lot of kids, I also noticed that they also resonate a lot with R2-D2. And I'm not to throw your thing, but I wonder if it's just because he's the little guy in this big giant
they can
universe.
identify with him.
Yeah.
He's pretty sassy too for a robot.
He is.
He has a lot of personality for someone who doesn't speak a language that we understand.
Yes.
Right? He's got a lot of personality. But so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that these kids who are going to read our books, the reason that we're writing them is we want kids to fall in love again with those original movies, because some of the kids have maybe fallen off a little bit.
Sure.
And so
or don't even know them that well.
We don't know them,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so to get the kids to fall in love with these stories again, I retold The Empire Strikes Back in the second person. You are Luke. So I took that fairy tale empty character thing even farther.
That's cool.
You are on Hoth. You have to face your father at the end of the book. And that energized the writing for me. I was struggling when I was writing in the third person, and I said, you know what, let's try second. And that book just flowed out of me.
For a lot of readers out there, second person is hard to write, I think, and not a lot of people do it.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think I did a particularly good job, except that, no, the movie, it works perfectly for it. As soon as, especially on Dagobah, as soon as you are being trained by Yoda, you're like, oh, I buy it. I'm in. So I feel like it really worked, yeah.
That's great. Tom, obviously you're a encyclopedia of Star Wars tidbits and useless information.
I really started to think Alex knows more than me, but I've been trying to hide that.
Competition, we got to do it.
There's going to need to be a trivia showdown that Adam and I will clearly fail, but we'll enjoy watching.
He knows a lot.
Yeah. So you're going from, you're taking, for you, this is like sacred stuff.
Right, it is sacred stuff.
You need to write it.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
You know, it was amazing, and some stuff like knowing that I was going to be the one that had to write Yoda's death scene and things like that, that was really intimidating. But in many ways, one of the hardest parts was, I've known what a speeder bike was for many years. Many years, I've known what a speeder bike was.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they land on indoors. Guy shows up on a speeder bike. You instantly, everybody knows what a speeder bike is after 3 seconds.
Yeah.
How do you can't just write a speeder bike shows up. Now you've got to explain in a book what is a speeder bike. But if you explain it, then you lose the excitement and the action.
Yeah.
You don't want to, fall asleep on indoor. Indoor is thrilling.
Yeah. And speaking of indoor, you really were passionate about making sure the Ewoks were portrayed in a certain way. Yeah.
It's always bothered me, people complaining about the Ewoks. And they're making the same mistake that the Emperor did. They're dismissing them because they're cute. And so I wanted to make sure cute, they're still cute in my book. I'm not going to make them ugly or something. They're still cute, but that's not going to be your first adjective for them. They're bloodthirsty, they're killers, they're savage. They take care of business. When you think, all right, should we discuss the stormtrooper thing?
Just take us to the end of the film and
all right, because there's a big party.
What is shown to us, but maybe people haven't connected the dots.
All right, well, there's a big party at the end of the book, and they're having this big party. They're chowing down on some substance, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't been hunting. We know they haven't been hunting because they've been busy fighting stormtroopers all day. So you put those two things together, there's a lot of empty stormtrooper helmets and armor around. So that's why in my book it's like, don't eat the stew.
Don't eat the spare ribs. Yeah. That's awesome. I don't think we could end it on a better note, guys. It's been great talking to you guys. We'll talk again real soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks,
all right.
Tony.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Tony.
All right.
All right, we're here right now with Seal Ballinger. Seal, you're the publicity director for Disney Hyperion.
Yes.
Some amazing books behind us, the Avengers series. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening with this for you guys and where you're going with it?
We cannot keep any of the Marvel Avengers stuff in stock. Obviously, there's a lot going on with the movies, which are blowing out of the box office, the Age of Ultron. We have some upcoming titles that we're skewing both young and old. We have early readers. We have storybooks, we have middle grade novels, and we have a YA book that's coming out this fall with Margie Stohl that's related to Black Widow.
Yeah. Black Widow, very hot.
Awfully exciting.
A lot of talk about Black Widow right now. Yeah. Can you tell me what's coming down the pike with some of the new books that people will be looking for?
Yeah, well, that book in particular is called Forever Red, and it's the first time that it'll be a female superhero that is the main character for any one of the Marvel books, so it's awfully exciting. And we've got a huge program with Marvel. Of course, Marvel's a part of the Disney company, and we work closely together and are able to look at properties as soon as they're available and start planning those things. It's a lot of movie tie-ins and things that are related to that, but also game books and activity books and things like that.
So Black Widow, the cover was just released. I saw it in Entertainment Weekly a couple days ago. Do you imagine some other big covers coming? Anything else we should be looking for next series?
Absolutely. Well, we actually just signed with Owen Colfer, who did the Artemis Fowl books. He is going to be doing an Iron Man book for us, another YA treatment coming up soon. So you're the first to hear that, and we'll be making a formal announcement about it sometime after BA.
I love it, the scoop. Well, thank you, Seal. Looking forward to talking to Margaret next. It's great to have you. 2015. I'm Rich Foley. This is Tony DiTerlizzi, our guest host for the hour. And we're also here right now with Margie Stohl, who's the author of the Beautiful Creatures book. So many people love those books.
Co-author with Cami Garcia.
Thank you, Cami Garcia, who we also love. But now, with a lot of fanfare and buzz, the Black Widow Forever Red, not the official cover here.
No.
The Black Widow Forever Red book. Welcome, first of all.
Thank you. It's super exciting. I mean, we had a crazy line out at the booth yesterday of people trying to get ARCs. So it's every little nerd girl, fangirl dream come true.
It is, absolutely. When I talked to Tony, I'm like, who should we bring on? He's like, have you talked to Margie Stohl? Have you seen the new Black Widow book? I was like, I have not. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Awesome. I was psyched because, you know, I think about the Beautiful Creatures books, supernatural stuff, the casters.
Southern Gothic.
Yes. And then I started reading this, and it's deep KGB intel. I was blown away. I really was.
SBR now, come from KGB past.
That's
right.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize because they know the Beautiful Creatures film or they know those books, but I come from a classic fantasy sci-fi background. So I made video games for 16 years.
Oh my gosh, your stock's just going up in my mind.
Well, you know what's weird to me? I see the connection too between the video games world and the Black Widow. I mean, because there's this whole thing now with Black Widow finally having her moment.
Yeah.
And Seal told me that there were people literally crying on the floor because you're finally giving Black Widow the equal treatment that she deserves. The same thing with some of the conversations happening in the gaming industry. You're sort of crossing both those boundaries.
Yeah, an interviewer at EW said you as a woman in the industry, you were pushing boundaries. I feel like Natasha does that, you know, and in her industry.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know what it feels like to be the female Avenger, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is like. I was the only woman in the bathroom in the games industry, but that's changing.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I mean, Marvel's killing it with women. I met Sana Amanat yesterday, who's like a senior editor there. The things they're doing right now with Ms. Marvel and Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
I mean, and Thor. Thor just had her big reveal.
Big
It's a great moment for women in comics.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Do you think that the films are influencing some of that? So now, as a broader audience that wasn't reading, you know, Marvel comics in like the 60s and 70s are seeing them, they're like, wait. Because as I thought about it, I'm like, I don't remember Black Widow. I never read Black Widow comics. I would read girl comics. I loved Red Sonja. I loved the Fantastic Four.
We don't have girl comics and boy comics. We just have comics.
It is changing.
So do you think it's changed partly because of the films?
I think it's like what happened with the YA industry after the mainstream popularity of, you know, fantasy, where you had J.K. Rowling and you had Stephanie Meyer. And suddenly, Beautiful Creatures was in 50 countries, and that becomes a sort of fantasy isn't a niche anymore, a niche crowd.
Yeah.
And we've been going to Comic-Con since it was at the Shrine Auditorium in Tiny, you know, years and years ago, and now it's a mainstream event. And I think that's, you know, that's the growth you're seeing. But I have 3 daughters, and they were so excited for me to get this project, and they are huge Natasha Romanoff fans.
Yeah.
But those are the new reader, you know, who expect more, who are tough. My kids are fencers. They come armed.
Nice.
You know, and I think that's what it's like.
You know, I think it's the new reader, but it's also the new moviegoer.
Yeah.
They expect more than a movie. They expect a book. They expect a deeper dive. So when you get into these characters, which you explore on a surface level for 2 hours in a movie, they want to go home and they want to do everything they can with that character. They want the comics, they want the book, especially if they really like a character. And I love the fact that they're not thinking about any of this now in terms of one platform or the other. It's all platforms.
Well, I think Marvel and Disney really get that. And I mean, they went out and found the writer who they think would be the best for Star Wars, for, you know, Marvel projects. They find the video gamer YA writer. I mean, that's...
Did you call them? Did they call you? How did that all happen?
I've known the Disney people. I've known Marvel people. So I worked on Spider-Man and Fantastic Four as a video game developer, and then I knew the Disney people, and I had a lot of respect for Emily Meehan, she's the editorial director there, as you know.
Yeah.
And I got this call in Italy from my agent, and I have this crystal clear adrenaline photograph of it as like probably the single greatest moment of my life. And I can tell you what I was wearing, eating, where I was standing. I just freaked out.
Yeah.
So I felt a lot of responsibility to do right by Natasha.
Right.
So I'm pleased. Sana Amanat at Marvel really put a lot into it too. So it was like a full, you could see the the synergy with the two editors who just, created this really just kind of miraculous kind of movement in between comics and YA, which fits so well together. It's like the same reader.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if we're going to experience, and I was thinking about this as reading it, a huge best-selling author tackling a comic book character, but obviously in this format. I wonder if we're going to start seeing now more comic book characters living and thriving, not in comics, but in novels and middle grade novels. What do you think?
I think you will. I think that the industry moves according to demand, and I know that readers like my own, my friends and my kids are driven to like their tribe.
Yeah.
My kid spends so much. My 14-year-old spends so much time on Tumblr. I think she experienced the first Avengers movie in GIFs entirely before she actually saw it.
I string these together.
That's happening, I know. I have a son who's doing the exact same thing.
So it's like, it's part of the currency of her friend group, and it's what means something to her.
Right.
And also, as sophisticated of a reader as she is, she also believes, these are real people to her, even at 14.
Okay, so with someone like Natasha, I mean, we were just talking about hero's journey. Adam was mentioning how Luke Skywalker was kind of this empty vessel character that it's easy to launch into.
Right.
What about Natasha? First of all, as the author, did you feel like you saw yourself in her, and do you need that to write a successful story?
I think you have to find an emotional place to connect, no matter what. I think you have to write the book for yourself, no matter what.
Yeah,
you're always sort of doing that. You have to make it real for you. Natasha is really tough. She's so closed off that was like the thrill of getting into Natasha's head, which is not a POV you're ever going to really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
But it was terrifying, and it took a long time. Like Natasha and I danced around each other until I finally was like, "Let me in, let me in."
You in.
Yeah.
It's kind of dark. It's dark. Her origin story is very dark.
Yeah, and it's intimidating working on canon. Natasha Romanoff. She's also been around for 50 years of comics or whatever. So there's a lot to work from.
How much of that do you have to be versed in, or was there teams that helped you kind of help you with the canon as you're writing?
Well, I mean, I read everything I could get my hands on, just like I did at Fantastic Four and like I did for Spider-Man. But also, I love comics, so that was not a sacrifice.
It was not homework for you. No, it was good stuff.
Very hard to do.
And then there's a lot of choosing. That's what happens with fantasy, with your own stuff too. You're like, what story do I want to tell?
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of talk with Marvel and with Disney about what's the story we all want to tell.
Right.
So it was just kind of like, I felt like I had a lot of guides. I felt like the Marvel universe is great. Marvel has a lot of stewards who know how to sort of protect the universe and what works for them.
Right.
As does Disney, and they have a huge overlap. Like their interests are essentially the same, and it worked with me and what I wanted to do, which is tell a very human story, tell a very emotional story.
Yeah.
Stay character centered, give a strong girl who, not a sidekick but a butt kicker.
Yeah.
And be as real as you can with the world she moves in. Don't pull any punches. Know what her weapons and her strategies would be. Get inside her head, and then show a different side of her.
Sounds like you know her so well, and it's it's clearly this adoption process, this dancing thing has happened. She's part of the family now.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me too is that you said earlier how you felt this pressure to make sure you did right by Natasha.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible.
And the difference between your own characters and bringing them in the world, and you can make them go whichever direction you want. They're yours. You're like, it's time to go this way now.
Yeah.
With Natasha, there's another guiding force, and that must be really challenging.
Yeah, it is challenging, more because you love the character so much, and so many people love her. And I'm one of those fangirls who's like, more Natasha. So I totally understand that. But it's the same way with your own characters. I mean, people come up to me and show me a copy of Beautiful Creatures that they read to each other in the delivery room when she was having the baby that they named after the main character.
Wow.
Right? So you must get that with Spiderwick and with Wanda and everything. Sometimes. I mean, certainly with Star Wars. You are as beholden to your readers in the 50 countries as you are, to Natasha's fans.
Your readers are not shy about letting you know exactly what they think. And certainly the Marvel fans are not shy about it.
And you see them online every day.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk to you, they reach out to you. M. Stohl on Twitter, they find me they tell me exactly what they like and don't like. There is no escaping that.
What do you think about that sort of differences in fandom between the books? This one has such a built-in massive world of fandom. You've now stepped right into the middle of it. Another world.
What I like to say is
Star Wars
I knew what I was getting into, as I'm sure you did,
Yeah.
because you experienced it first as a fan.
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
So
we all stood in those lines.
Yeah, you come in. There's a reverence, right? You're excited about it. You're trying to satisfy the fangirl, the fanboy within you, and then also the author. And what can I bring to this and make it special?
Yes, and I think Marvel and Disney are good at that. At finding the person who will deliver the product that's like kind of worthy of the franchise and who cared about it always.
Yes. I think it's easy for people to assume that because this is big corporations that the people there are callous and uncaring, but it's completely the opposite. Mike Seglain, who was in charge of overseeing the Star Wars stuff, is a huge Star Wars nerd.
Yeah.
I'm sure the same can be said for the folks at Marvel.
Oh no, I was in the Marvel offices yesterday, and I try to not act like such an enormous fangirl now that I'm working with them.
There's the business people over there too.
It's a disaster. Me trying not to fangirl.
That doesn't work.
There's like a wall they all take pictures in front of. I was like, that's the wall. I mean, I freaked out every 5 feet.
That's what you should be doing. That's awesome.
They were like, get it together, man. But it was probably, it's all the top 5 days of my life. It's just been great, and that's what our job should be, not a job, right?
Have you thought about where it's going, and do you want to stay with Black Widow and do some more of these?
I've thought about it all the time, and the other thing about working with corporations is you would be shot if you spilled any of those secrets.
So you
before.
think about it all the time, and we'll take that.
As a human, I think about it all the time. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, of course.
That's all I can say.
I think there's room for more, for sure.
Oh yeah.
I would read it, write it, live it, love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan first and foremost.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what about Beautiful Creatures? What's happening with you, and are you gonna do anything more with Cammie, and where are you going?
Cammie, I wrote Beautiful Creatures with my one of my oldest friends, and we've worked together since 2009. Right now, she just went to Macmillan with one of our editors and is sort of setting up a franchise there, so she's busy for a while. I have a lot going on. I have 2 unannounced projects with Disney, so I'm in the House of Mouse for a while.
We love the unannounced projects because they're going to be good, but you can't say anything about it.
Yeah, that's good.
We have to wait it out.
A little excitement.
Yeah, no, it's a great time. It's a great time for YA, and I feel like it's a great time for middle grade too. Like we're moving a lot of books, and it's fun.
It is. It is a great time. And I've had a great time with both of you guys. And with Tony for the full hour, it's been really wonderful. And what I love is the energy that I'm feeling all around us, and the fact that you're combining all these things. And when the cover came out for Forever Red, it was wonderful to see that explode through the internet. And same is happening with Tony and your books with Star Wars and all the others. It's been great to have you for the hour. And Margie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Good job, Tony.
I did it.
You're a star.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah,
Thanks for
having me. It was great. And we'll be back. We're going to be back with more of BookCon 2015. Thanks for joining us for this first hour. Lots more to come.
Funding for BookView Now is provided by the Wincote Foundation.